and welcome everyone this afternoon to ULI Sacramento's the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force program. This is a really monumental program. This is the first year of our DEI task force, and it's at some point in time we're going to hear from our task force chair, Austin Camardi. But I'd like to formally welcome you. My name is Jose Bodipo Memba. I am the current chair for the ULI Sacramento, and really looking forward to this discussion today. We're hearing from 3 organizations and 3 individuals who are helping lead and doing amazing work, ensuring that our industry represents the diversity of our communities, and again, providing even better product across the board. And so Lisa Ballantyne, Brandon Logan, Lydia Ramirez will all provide really unique perspectives on how they're helping in the spaces of equity, diversity, inclusion in development and land use spaces. Again, we'd like to ask everyone to mute their phones and their computers and keep their cameras off so we can focus on the speakers today. And again, as always, all of these programs are only possible because of the amazing sponsors that we have for ULI Sacramento. First, we'd like to thank SMUD, who's our platinum sponsor. Our silver sponsors, Best and Krieger, Downtown Rayyard Adventures, ESA, Chronic, McClellan Park, Stonebridge Properties, Tykert, Wood Rogers. Our bronze sponsors, Ascent Environmental, Cunningham Engineering, EPS, Fair and Piers, Jackson Properties, Weintraub Tobin, Mark and One Builders, and RQ Studio. And I want to give special thanks to RQ Studio and Stonebridge Properties, who have been the formal sponsors for our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. They've led the way in ensuring that this content is brought to you. And again, I want to thank their leadership and Randy Sater and where's Mark Trescott. I want to give a few other program announcements. May 19th, we have our Housing Committee program from 12 to 1:15. This will be focusing on our series on the housing crisis. And this is really going to be focusing on repositioning retail into residential assets. We're going to hear from a development team of Collin Creek Mall in Plano, Texas. Once complete, the property they have will be transformed into a $1 billion mixed-use destination with up to 3,100 residential units in a series of new office, restaurant, and hotel buildings. We'll also have the 2 architects from the DLR group out of Los Angeles who are going to share their mall redevelopment projects and how they're involved in adaptive reuse. So we want to make sure that as many of you can come to that event. That'll be on May the 19th. And so now I would like to introduce Austin Camardi. And again, I really want to give Austin some extra kudos because initially, as she joined the ULI as a young professional, she challenged ULI to do more and do better. And she didn't just do it with an ask, but she did it with action. And she's taken on and led this committee and to help put together this program. I'm really proud of the work she's doing. Austin Camardi.
All right, thank you, Jose. I really appreciate that. Again, my name is Austin Perry Camardi. I am the chair of our DEI task force, and I'm working very closely with Ellen Martin as well to lead our initiatives. So for those of you who do not know, our committee launched in the summer of 2020, similar to many organizations across the nation, and following conversations around racial justice and racial inequities that have been facing our country and have come to rise in the past 365 days, especially while we've all been remote here and quarantining. So like other orgs, we've been really focusing to analyze institutional racism and exclusive land use practices and discrimination that many faced previously and continue to face today. And we particularly took a look at what our industry could be doing and can do to become a more inclusive field where our employees and practitioners can look more like and more better reflect the communities in which we serve. Our committee specifically is focused on making a more inclusive community inside here at ULI. We're going to be focused on making DEI initiative programs and events that our members can gain access to. And also we'd like to develop an industry pipeline of diverse professionals so we can bring new faces to our field. I'd like to go ahead and take this time to remind our members to please take our membership demographic survey. That will really give our committee a baseline of who our members are. We'll add a link to the chat so you all can pull that up and remember to fill out that survey. We'd also like to invite you to check out on the ULI Sacramento webpage. We've launched a DEI initiative tab. So if you have any questions about what we're working on, you can take a look and see what we've been up to. I will also add my email to the chat. So if anybody has questions or wants to get involved, you all can reach out to me. We have some wonderful speakers planned for tonight. So very excited to hear from everybody on our panel. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass it off to Randy Sater. Randy Sater is a past ULI Sacramento chair. He is also the president of Stonebridge Properties and a member and proud sponsor of our DEI task force. So thank you very much, Randy, and I'll go ahead and pass it off to you.
Thank you, Austin. Would like to remind everybody, if you have questions for our panel today, feel free to use that chat function on your computer. We'll be saving some time at the end to preview some of those questions as they come in. And Mary will be taking a look at those, and we'll get some of the very best questions saved for the end that you come up with there. It's a real pleasure of mine to be able to moderate this panel today. I've had an opportunity to chat with the panelists, and it's just an amazing, amazing group of people we have with us tonight. Let me start by introducing them. First, let me start with Brandon Logan. Hopefully Brandon is on your screen. Brandon, wave and maybe or say something and your cell will light up. Brandon is an associate with CBRE San Antonio. He's responsible for sale, purchase, and leasing of land, office, and retail property within the Central Business District, East Side, underserved, and emerging markets. He's also integral to CBRE's efforts in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of interesting note also, Brandon graduated cum laude in 3 years from Grambling State University, and I was impressed with this next piece of news also. As well, he was a member of the 2005 National Championship team. Congratulations, Brandon. That's pretty exciting. Brandon, welcome to our panel today. Next panelist is Lydia Ramirez. Lydia is Senior Vice President and Chief Operations and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at Five Star Bank right here in Sacramento. Lydia has over 16 years of experience in senior level banking and is skilled in strategic inclusion implementation, operational process, and sales management. Lydia graduated from UC Davis and more recently obtained her MBA from Sac State. Lydia also serves as chair of the executive committee of the Sacramento Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Lydia, welcome to our panel. And finally, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Lisa Ballantyne. Lisa resides in Orinda, California, and is Senior Vice President of Turner Construction, responsible for Northern and Southern California. And I believe you're coming to us from Southern California today, so thank you. Yeah. Lisa's responsible for over 1.5 billion of revenue annually. She's a graduate of Tulane University and received her MBA from Simmons College School of Management in Boston. Lisa is also very active in many nonprofit organizations, industry associations, and philanthropy, as well as supporting the Associated General Contractors partnership with Build Out California. Build Out is a program which focuses on promoting LGBTQ+ construction-related businesses as part of its broader mission to strengthen the construction industry through inclusion in the office and on the job site. So thank you to all of our panelists today. It's a real pleasure to have you here. You know, let's start out by just kind of thinking about today, why is the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion, why does it matter so much today more than ever in the real estate, construction, and finance industry? And not to pick on you by going first, but Brandon, could you kick that off by giving us some of your thoughts on why this matters so much today?
Thanks, Randy. And while I'm not a resident of Sacramento, I must say that my parents met in Sacramento, so I always will be indebted to that city, because if it wasn't for Sacramento, I probably would not be here. So yeah, what a great question and a heavy question to kick it off. And just want to remind everyone, I am a part of CBRE on the brokerage side. I'm not a corporate employee, but I definitely have been leading initiatives in Texas that have been setting new precedents of how we can travel further together. I think it really started, Randy, at the hands of the murder of George Floyd last May. individuals started to recognize the social injustice and the racial injustice that had been taking place in this country was exacerbated. It gave everyone a time to pause, to recognize, since we were in this period of COVID, we're required to stay at home. Everyone had a chance to see what took place. This is not a new conversation. I think what is happening is that individuals who care about humanity, who care about community, can no longer ignore it as someone else's issue. And the opportunity that we have now to reconstruct a new reality, given what COVID has created in our marketplace, is exciting to me. It's certainly unfortunate that we've lost so many lives to this horrendous pandemic. At the same time, it is exciting to help to redesign how we work more interconnected, interrelated moving forward. I will end by saying this. I think COVID had exposed our fault lines in our respective cities that showed that we are more dependent on one another than we've ever acknowledged. And so I'm hoping that the industries that have been key drivers to economic segregation and racial segregation, like real estate, starts to acknowledge that simple truth and starts to rebuild on what is possible and what we can look like in 2021 and beyond.
Thank you, Brandon. And I'm curious, Lydia, how did this conversation evolve within your organization at Five Star Bank in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
A great question. And just to kind of piggyback off Brandon, last year's events, both the pandemic as well as the George Floyd, all of it together, really put on a stage globally. Like our world slowed down enough to pay attention. And with that came a sense of responsibility that all of us hold collectively as a community to grow together, to rebuild together. And it really takes an entire community working together as one to rebuild that from every industry looking in. And you have to take a look at not just the external community component of it, but an internal equity of what we're doing and how are we maybe unconsciously or unbiasedly not paying attention to how we can contribute to a greater cause at a greater level. So it starts internally, and then you can really add value externally from a community standpoint, from an equity standpoint. So I think what we did was we took what we had done historically, which was contribute to the underrepresented, the underserved at a smaller scale, and really realized we had an opportunity to create greater impact with partnership, through strategic partnership, and really be able to drive the economies within the Sacramento region by being able to facilitate that. But again, it starts with that internal look inside to show, and then creates that external communication as well. What are we driving? What are we saying? What are we not saying, but what are we doing? And asking all those questions starts with the leadership at the top and those that want to engage. But if you don't have that leadership at the top, it's really difficult to engage in a tough conversation. It's not an easy conversation for any institution to have or any industry to have, but for those that are brave enough to have it, you will find that many research studies have shown the insurmountable evidence as to why it is a great opportunity for us to start taking a look at bringing diverse voices to the table.
Yeah, thanks, Lydia. We'll come back to that conversation in a minute. Lisa, I'm interested. I know this has been part of Turner Construction's culture for quite a while. Can you speak to this? How this has evolved at Turner Construction as well?
Sure. No, happy to. Thanks again for having us. I think Brandon articulated sort of maybe a catalyst again for the conversation. It is not a new conversation. It is, hundreds of years of discussions, but really taking advantage of this moment. Turner has always had not always, I shouldn't say always, for years we have had a community and citizenship initiative and group, and again, full-time people as well as in the business units. We have had diversity and inclusion, that sort of joined in several years ago. But I think that it ties so well to what Lydia just talked really about is this year, there was maybe 2 focus points, right? It's a huge, huge topic, but really realizing it's not just diversity and inclusion, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what does equity really look like? And to Lydia's comment, we had the first piece is looking at ourselves as Turner Construction. What about our own people? And are we really focused enough on not just diversity and inclusion, but the equity within that? We launched, last year, our first annual true full equity audit. We hadn't really done, we've done a lot of surveying, we do a lot of touch points, but truly a focused study on not just equity in recruiting, in pay, but in performance evaluation, training. Is there equity? Trying to really get that unconscious bias off the table. When you really look hard, you had to look very hard at yourself. It was absolutely driven by our CEO, Peter Davern, very passionate. His mission in life is for active caring of our people. And this reality that diversity, equity, inclusion is at the forefront of being actively caring for your people. So I could go on forever on that. It's only an hour panel. I'll keep moving. But the other piece that I think ties directly to both what Brandon and Lydia said as well was it is about the company, but it's also about what that company can directly impact. As a construction company, I think a lot of you know Turner Construction, we're a general contractor, a construction manager, and we're able to work with trade partners. So we work and hire, hundreds, maybe thousands across the country, workers trade workers, skilled crafts people, as well as trade partners. And, job sites are historically, have they always traditionally been that place of welcoming? We would like to think that our jobs were. We're very driven on the right environment on our projects, that you come to your project and it's a Turner project because it feels different, it feels better. But what we even went farther to say is we've realized there's years and years and years of people walking by things that are on walls of bathrooms, hearing people say inappropriate things in a hoist or on a job site. And there was maybe, I hate to say blindness to it, but there was just sort of this, well, that's just the way it is. And we said, you know what? No, that is not the way it is. So really creating impact where zero tolerance for bias, comments, events on our job sites, no hate. This is our house, our project, no hate is allowed. And really taking a firm stance with training, with buy-in from our trade partners. We have amazing trade partners. They were 100% in. They're like, we get it. And you know what? You're right. We're not going to deliver porta potties that aren't spotlessly clean, and we'll keep them that way. There's no reason that hate should exist on walls. There's no reason that hate should exist in the way we talk to one another. So again, this whole moment has really created us with a clearer vision of it is not just about internal, it's really what can we impact as well within those communities we work. It may be a small start, but it can grow from there.
Yeah, you've prompted in my mind, because I come from the construction industry as well at Tykert. And of course, safety is always one of those issues for which you can shut down a job site. And I'm just curious, have you ever shut down a job site because of a hate-related issue or a race-related issue? Or
unfortunately, several.
Okay.
And I say unfortunately because you don't want to ever have a hate incident. And I'm sure, you're all in California, or many are, but even in other parts of the country, we have made the paper a bit, not, and I would say, hey, people would say, is that negative? I'm like, no, it's that we're actually, it's happening everywhere. We're just doing something about it.
Yeah.
So I'm proud that we're in the paper because it is happening on other jobs and they're not stopping it. So really to be able to say, if there is something, we will stop a job, we will investigate, we will train. We've trained at some of our major projects, 450 workers. And especially during COVID, it's challenging. You got to do that in smaller groups. But what I love is when you train some of these workers and they come back out of that training and they say, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Well, hats off to you. Congratulations. That's certainly a good move on your part. I'm interested also, there's a lot of terminology in this conversation as well. And we've used it already in terms of implicit bias. And implicit bias comes into play. Everybody has one form of implicit bias or another, depending on what the issue is. You know, I'm curious how implicit bias kind of plays into the conversation as you roll programs out within your companies or have this conversation with your company. And I'd like to go back to you, Brandon, and kind of how implicit bias may have worked with the brokerage community in San Antonio as you talk about these issues in the community.
Sure. Great question, Randy. And I really enjoyed Lydia and Lisa's initial comments, but I would just respond to you by saying this. You've acknowledged that we all have our own implicit biases, and I believe those are shaped through our experiences and our surroundings, which is why I am a huge advocate for diverse circles. I do not like being around people that look or think like me consistently, because that is not the nature of reality in which I reside in, whether it's in San Antonio or in the broader society. So in order to quell our implicit biases, we must insert diverse thoughts and opinions around us to help develop a more circular sense of how we can frame in operational procedures that work for the good of all and not just for some. And when you look at real estate and its pattern of practices from the brokerage standpoint, most individuals did the recruiting from the country club. And that's why a lot of individuals that are working in brokerage or developing communities look and think alike, because they come from the same groupings. And for us, it's about making a clean steak like Turner and saying that we are going to affect our operating environment, not only by the individuals we hire to represent us on transactions, but the people we do business with. You know, making a multi-billion-dollar pledge to support minority businesses is a good thing for everyone, because it still helps the bottom line of our local and federal economies. And so we have to start realizing that we must usher in new spaces. And I want to make one quick point, because oftentimes when we talk about diversification, in most cases, a negative purview will come up as equivalent to elimination. And what I'm suggesting is not eliminate anyone, it's about addition. So you're playing the addition and the multiplication game versus subtraction and division. You know, we have to start bringing seats to the table that are absent. And it takes us as leaders on this call to look around the room to recognize who's not present and to have the courage to act to bring them forward as a moral responsibility to our community. If we're really invested in getting to the point where everyone feels like they belong, we have to take these steps. And it shouldn't even be considered as courageous steps. It should be considered as taking the right steps. And I think that's what the brokerage community is really doing, is to analyze, you know, a lot of the wrongs or a lot of the patterns that need to be recorrected, and having people like myself that are willing to have the difficult conversation with other people to start challenging one's thought process, and ultimately it reveals their implicit biases.
Thanks, Brandon. I'm glad you mentioned this topic of diversity and bringing profitability to the bottom line. I believe it's McKinsey who has studied this extensively and shown how profitability, the bottom line, is improved by bringing diverse voices to the table, whether it's on as part of your staff, as part of your boards of directors, how that's improved the profitability of companies. And I guess I'm wondering, Lydia, are there experiences within Five Star Bank where you've seen how bringing diversity to the table and as part of the conversation has improved the bottom line?
Absolutely, Randy. I mean, without question, when you have different points of view, opportunity to listen to what is not within your immediate circle, you have vantage points, and you're able to articulate those vantage points to create market opportunity and opportunities that you may not have otherwise thought about or been able to be exposed to. So definitely the diverse group, the diverse circles opens opportunity for everyone involved, and it ultimately brings down a profit to that bottom line. When I did all of my research, when I was going through my MBA program, I mean, everything points to diversity equals profitability. Every research done by Gallup, McKinsey, they all point to the same thing. You need different voices at the table in order to create additional profits. And it's what contributes to the customer experience. It allows the customer to feel as if they're being serviced by not just one specific group, but a multitude of different groups that come together at the head to create a strategic vision that will ultimately lead to bottom line profitability.
Thank you. I'd like to kind of move the conversation, if we could, a little bit in terms of when we think about our companies. This is the conversation we've had here at Teichert as well. Fairly white organization in terms of the corporate office. When we think about our organizations and how to be more inclusive, it certainly starts in many ways with having these conversations, but also then quickly turns to recruitment. And frequently the conversation around recruitment is, how do we attract people of color to our industry? And of course, part of that is, can an individual see themselves within that company, right? Is this a place where if I'm looking for a job that I can see myself? And so I'm curious, Lisa, from Turner Construction standpoint, how have you approached the topic of recruitment, and how have you actively recruited for people of color within your organization?
So totally, I think even Brandon said it before too as well. You want to be in a company where you can see yourself. You want to be in an organization. And I will say, I think construction, and as proud as I am to work for Turner, I think we're one of the leaders, but it's not good enough. We're all not good enough yet. There isn't enough diversity and equity and inclusion in construction, and we're working on it. And we have to be very, the word is intentional. How are we being very intentional? This is not change does not happen by chance. Change happens because we want it to happen and we make intentional changes for that. So I think from the first thing, we go back to just what are we doing really to make sure that not just we're bringing in, so I'll get to the how do we recruit, but also then how do we really create, we talk about, I think on a pre-call, we said, sometimes when someone's having a hard time with performance, you do a performance improvement plan. Well, what about a performance action plan? Like, we're talking more about what is the action plan for someone's career? What's the playbook? How do we really work with people to not just get them in the door, but they have to see a path. They have to see it quickly. They have to see it equitably. So really, we're being very intentional on that. We're creating processes that actually take away the ability for that unconscious bias, even if it's not conscious, that unconscious bias. So that's number one. And we need to we are making, but I think we need to continue to work on that. And that is an every day, every month, every year effort. And then in recruiting, we hire a lot of engineers, out of college. We need to probably be a little bit more flexible of that. Like, construction is a welcoming environment for not just engineering students. So getting a broader base of people, because, again, that's the pipeline. We need to build the pipeline. So we're looking at where we recruit. As an example, we looked at earlier last year, are we recruiting enough at historically Black colleges? Most of those are on the east side of the Mississippi, but we're reinvesting in that because it's an amazing, some of our best people in California came from some of those schools, but they had to find us. We want to find them. We're also looking at, should we be looking at even getting to community colleges earlier so that we then can stay with those through an internship program, even if they go to a UC school after that. California, we're very fortunate with these amazing community colleges that can then go to a UC program. We're looking at different conventions, different conferences. We're ensuring that the people that are doing recruiting, again, I'm so fortunate in California. We have such a great, just naturally diverse group of people in California, but making sure they all are involved in recruiting. People want to go to work again where they see themselves. So I think it's not one silver bullet. There's a lot of different approaches that you need to take for it. And it's also, we also want experienced hires. It's not just the college recruits. How do we recruit for those experienced hires? A lot of that is making sure too, people want to know what you stand for as a company. People want to know, and I'm so proud where, if you ask people at Turner what they stand for, actively caring for people, no acceptance of hate, an inclusive environment, one that's driven with equity, care, and safety. It's not a story, it's the truth. So, there's a bunch of different ways to do it, Randy, but I will say it's, and working with partners like people that are on this call really to change the industry, to make it more attractive. We're involved with ACE Mentoring. I'm on the board with ACE Mentoring, which focuses on STEM, workforce development. There's so many things we need to do to get people involved in real estate and construction.
Thank you, Lisa. Brenda, I'm really interested in your perspective on this as well. This notion of recruitment into the field of real estate, this notion of what keeps an individual attracted to this industry, growth within the industry. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, thanks, Randy. I was going to interject and give my point anyways, because this is a sensitive but inspiring topic for me. So take you back to my formative years. I had one Black teacher in my K through 12 experience. So I never could see myself in leadership, which is why, you mentioned my football days. I decommitted from the University of Texas to attend a historically Black college university. I wanted to experience the fullness of myself and not just be viewed as an athlete. I knew I had a lot to offer in life beyond what was in the gridiron. And I knew that I needed to be in a place that I felt was belonging to me. Being a part of the majority feels much different than being in the minority. It was empowering. It gave me a sense of place to where I was today, where now I've led one of the nation's largest Rotary clubs of San Antonio, the youngest Black to ever do that. I've had a chance to lead the nation's largest ML King March, the most diverse march on record, because of these attributes of being able to find myself in leadership. So that mirror and reflection is important. But I would encourage everyone to realize that the diverse strategy should not stop at one. Being the only Black broker in San Antonio concerns me, but I'm excited to lead this initiative to ensure that we have a pipeline. And while most people are high-fiving and celebrating that I'm now in the business, it's still in a space of isolation. So really much hasn't changed other than a corporation now can go put out a press release that they've hired me. The reality of it is it's important that we must work in twos, not just establish one, but make sure someone always has a sense of connectivity at any level, whether that's entry level, mid-level, executive level. And when it comes to recruiting, being able to go intentionally into the HBCU space is important, but you want to have a multi-pronged approach. I think getting into STEM programs in the K through 12 area is just equally as critical. You have to understand, if you look at the historical arc of real estate, there wasn't a lot of, in this case, Black professionals. And so the understanding of the industry is key. And you have to start planting those seeds at the high school level. Imagine what a job shadow day could look like for high school students that may be non-white. That's the first step to get them interested. So when they pursue, courses in college, perhaps, looking at engineering or some other component that ties back into construction or real estate would make more sense because you've exposed them to the realities of a career. And then when you get into college, to really be intentional about building breadth and depth, not just at one campus and not looking just for that one. Again, you want to have this pipeline of opportunities that starts with internship. So the corporation can understand maybe there are some learning deficiencies that take place because they don't have the uncle or the grandfather that had a multi-million-dollar real estate practice. So maybe they are lagging behind. But I think as leaders, that's where we really get to learn ourselves. Do we really have the influence and ability to shape people, or do we only look for the ones that were A+ and ready to go in and play in the game? So those are the things that I would say that we all need to look internally to figure out, do we have a developmental track that's multi-pronged that allows for all levels of inclusion leading up to a career with any respective field?
I would have to agree with that. Sorry, Randy.
Yeah, go ahead, Lydia.
So Five Star Bank is a proud partner with Cristo Rey High School. And for those that are not in the Sacramento area, it is a predominantly underrepresented, a lot of leading Hispanic area that really go and they take just some phenomenal children and get them corporate ready. Like they give them the opportunity at the sophomore and junior level to participate in a work study program where they get an opportunity to understand what does it feel like to be responsible, accountable. They can see me and as themselves, right? Like me I'm proud to say I am, to Brandon's point, I am the highest ranking Latina in the Sacramento region in the banking space, which is phenomenal for me. I love the fact that I can say that, but I want another person next to me. I want two more people next to me that I can say, you know, we've made it. But what I can provide to those that are coming behind me is a hand to show them that this is possible. You can make it happen. And I'm happy to mentor those that are curious, that want to know. But kind of back to the Brandon's point, and with Cristo Rey, there are programs like that exist within cities everywhere across the United States. I would encourage all of our corporate citizens to take a look at how can we help to shape the minds of those that are within the high school age, because that is when they're the most curious. We have the most impact at that time to be able to help shape what is possible for them. So I know JA is a big proponent of it, Junior Achievement. They go in and they really help to shape the financial acumen of our students. But a lot of what they do is provide mentorship and an idea of what's going on within not just the financial world, but all of the worlds. And so I know they partner here right now with Cristo Rey to kind of help shape the lives of those that are in those high school areas. And they look to bring on speakers every Friday to be able to talk about different industries that they could see themselves in by taking leaders that are of Hispanic descent and show them that this is possible and this is how I got there. And so participating, all of us in reach out efforts, specifically all the way down into the high school levels. And then again, we partner with Sac State at the business cohort level, honors cohort level. And then I know we had talked about this in a pre-call, but taking a look at that and going one step further. And if you were to look at the banking space, I would say anything from the VP down, most banks mirror their community, spot on. But when you take that step above the VP level, that is when everything changes, right? You have a predominantly white focus and male focus at the top of the house. So really opening up those next levels. So, you know, reaching down into the MBA programs that are in and around the area to create partnership and mentorship to bring in experience at those higher levels is going to be critical for us to continue to create that diversity at the table.
Yeah, I think I would want to also kind of recognize that both Lydia and Brandon have talked about the importance as being a successful leader in their community to give that hand up to other people of color or members of the LGBTQ community. What I would also say that there's a number of people on this call today. It's also critically important for that white guy to give that hand up to others in the community to be able to have those same opportunities. And so this is an opportunity for all of us to be mentors and to reach out and give a hand up and help bring more diversity into our community, into our field of profession. And this is a conversation that I wish we could spend a lot more time on. But before I get told that I have to pass the baton off to Jose for questions from the audience, I'd like to go to each one of you and say, real estate is by and large a lot of small companies, okay? They're not all Turner Constructions and they're not all Tykert Constructions. They're not all five-star banks. A lot of are very small companies. What's that one thing that you would say you could do to make a difference to a small company who may not even have this conversation even on the table? And let's start with, I see Lisa pondering the question. Let's start with Lisa.
So I want to make sure I understood it correctly, though, Randy. Right? You said what advice would we give them, or what would we think they could do?
A lot of the companies involved in ULI in the Sacramento region are smaller companies. Yeah. They don't have the big budgets. They don't have the diversity training programs that a lot of us have access to. What's that one thing that a small company or a small individual person could do that would really be a step forward in terms of trying to get diversity discussed and talked about and get more diversity and inclusion and equity in our industry?
I get it. I'm sorry. I needed a little more clarity. You know what, I think this is something that is not about size or is about how much revenue you have or how many employees. For one thing, it's people attending something like this. I think the one thing, we have to talk about this. We have to call it what it is. We have to not, we have to be transparent. We have to be honest. So I think even in some small companies, you know, one best practice maybe that we have what's called employee resource groups. And a lot of people have that. I don't care how big your organization is or not, but there's people that want to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. There might be, we call it mosaic. There may be people that want to talk about, you know, when something happens against the Asian community and there's Asian hate in our communities, we're going to have a courageous conversation about it. We want to hear from our AAPI community. We want to learn, we want to educate. So I think that the first thing, right, and I love some of my greatest colleagues are like, education isn't enough, Lisa. And they're absolutely right. Like, it's not the minority's job to educate the majority. That's number one. Go educate yourself. Don't wait for the minority to educate you. That's unfair and unrealistic and not right. So get educated, read books, listen, talk, and then take action. And I think small companies can take action. They can talk about it. They can have a position on things. They can be passionate about it. And I think, as we have all said, it does help business too. That is the world that we're living in. This is going to be something that the more you can really make a decision, embrace it, learn about it, do not just think that it's something that's going by on the side. This, we have to all be in this together. So to me, that's any size company, any type of organization. That's really, I think, the journey that I've been on over the last year or 10 years is it's my responsibility. As a leader of any company, it's my responsibility.
Good. Brandon, what's that one thing?
Yeah, I think, well, if you're going to pin me down to one thing, Randy, I would say values. I think that we have to start looking at our business philosophies. What do we value? I think what we focus on, we can enhance. And if we make diversity a key focus in our values, that will change. It should change your thought process and your approach to how you design and operate your business. So that would be the one thing. And I fully agree with what Lisa says. And I think to keep in mind that the 4 attributes that enable a business is culture, leadership, alignment, and teamwork. And so your values will begin to shape all of those things if you do it right. So the good thing about smaller companies is that they're nimble in nature, and you can make, you know, revisions to, you know, your governing documents relatively quickly. Make yourself publicly known, and don't be afraid for allyship. You talked about mentors, and I'm proud that I have a white mentor, a Black mentor, and a Hispanic mentor, male and female. Again, this is something that I've been very intentional about doing, is going out and seeking connectivity so that I have a greater picture of what worlds are like in other people's lives. So diversity and empathy would be 2 leading values that I would encourage everyone to adopt and operate from on a daily basis.
Thanks, Brandon. Lydia, what's your one thing?
Be intentional about where you put your table. Be intentional about who you invite to your table. Be intentional. That is my one thing. Be intentional. And it doesn't matter, to Lisa's point, where you are in terms of the scope and size of your business. It's really about, is this an important factor for you? We've talked about how this can help your bottom line. At whatever size business you are, everybody wants to improve their bottom line. So in order to do that, it really will take your business to a new level of height if you add diversity to that table. The other thing I would say is, so I'm the chair of the Hispanic Chamber for this year. And I would say, for those small businesses that are on this call, be resourceful. You're not in this alone. There's so many of us that are doing this. So instead of being siloed, partner, align, know that your ethnic chambers within the cities that you occupy are doing something about this at some level. So use those resources that are allocated to you, and most likely at no cost. I know for our chamber, you know, we're happy to engage in sharing our resources, our training, our education. to help the betterment of the overall economy, not just the underserved, but the entire economy for the Sacramento region. So I would encourage those to think about how can they be resourceful without having to spend money. But it does just take the want and the will to want to be intentional.
Thank you. And we never have enough time for this seemed like a cursory introduction to this topic. Didn't get back to Lisa with the really progressive program at Associated General Contractors, their partnership with Build Out, which is attracting LGBTQ plus members of the community to the construction industry and highlighting those folks. Lisa, thank you for your support of that effort. I'm hoping we can come back and do a 2.0 on this topic, but I'm being told that I need to turn it back to you, Jose. So take it away.
Thank you, Randy. And like you said, I think this is definitely the 101 of a multi-part course. I think there's a lot more to be said, but there's some great questions in the chat. So I want to put these to the panelists to respond to. And first, is customary, we like to welcome our elected officials when we have a guest elected official here, Mayor John Dunbar from Yountville. We're really happy to have you. Thank you again for attending and participating for your role with ULI. You have a great question here in the chat. He says here, being an elected official, I'd like to hear about the role municipal land use policy plans in providing equitable access and opportunity in development and workforce training. And I'd like to put that out to anyone on the panel and to you also, Randy.
Could you restate that question one more time?
No problem. The mayor would like to know about the role of municipal land use policy and what role it plays in providing equitable access and opportunity in development and workforce training.
Okay, that's a big question. Any of the panelists want to tackle that one?
I'm curious what Brandon says from the brokerage. That's I was gonna not to pick on you, Brandon, but I was like, I think it'd be interesting if it's.
Oh, it's good, but I can't give the state perspective. So I'll just speak from, the opportunities that are present, regardless of location. Government created a lot of the issues. Now government has a chance to, resolve a lot of the issues. I think with municipal land, you have the unique opportunity to be intentional with what is developed and who develops it. And steering from your traditional practices, I think is critically important. If you want a different outcome, you have to try a new process. And I know that here in Texas, the workforce development programs have been really enhanced to focus in on ensuring that those individuals from, minority groups or lower economic classes are getting the opportunities that they need to really start to realize upward mobility. It's no different from a land acquisition and who develops it. We have been able to go through an acquisition process from city government to a Black-led or minority-led development with incentives to ensure success. So really looking at the different tools and the levers of a project is important. And while you may not give certain incentives to other projects, you have to be intentional with what type of incentives that you give to a minority-led project. If this is the case, just running a hypothetical scenario to ensure that these businesses are starting to improve their bottom line, but the hiring practices are controlled by you on who gets the chance to work on those projects.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add to that is just the focus on the equity piece. We need to start with the difficult conversation that government helped to create the problem by the fact that we had redlining in this country. There were vast majorities of people of color who were not able to participate in wealth building in this nation through the primary ownership of a home. They were able to go fight in World War II, but when they came back as heroes, they weren't able to go buy a home in the neighborhood that they wanted to buy a home in, a neighborhood that would create vast amounts of wealth for their family. We need to recognize that conversation first, and then talk about equity and how to move forward on this conversation, I think.
Great feedback. there's more, I'm sure there's more that could be responded to, and I'm hoping to get this engaged in more conversation, but I want to get to the next question from Amy. Lisa, could you elaborate on the processes that you're putting in place to eliminate unconscious bias? Again,
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
really topical issue there.
Sure. You know, probably 8 years ago, I mean, you know, this has been the journey where even just calling unconscious bias what it is. So really, it does start with a bit of what I talked about with education. We did a 100% training for all of our people just on unconscious bias. And this was like 8 years ago. And now over that time, you continue, we changed some of our succession progression planning because as we know, I mean, a lot of it has been done in leadership when it comes to what the process is for how do you identify successors for opportunity? How do you make sure that that's done in an equitable fashion? One of the things specifically with that process over the last 2 years is we start initially, any of those sessions start with an intentional focus as part of the built-in process on diversity and equity and inclusion. And you got to do a bunch of training during the year on it, but then even before you put your mind to talk about your people and where those opportunities are for their progression and their growth, and then the succession plan of the company, you're starting that conversation talking about, let's talk again about infinity bias. Let's talk again, like it's actually very head clearing to really start to call out those things. So there's processes from annual trainings, monthly trainings, to how we do succession progression. Again, through our own equity audit, we're looking at how we do evaluations, development appraisals. We do an audit on those development appraisals and how are people actually, is there being bias built into how people are doing their evaluations? Then you're getting those results as a business unit or as a project. So there's a lot of work that's done in that field. You know, we have a specialist, Lindsay Ciancetta, who is really does it for us out of our headquarters office. I'd be happy to connect someone with kind of what we are doing, but there are consultants out there. I think that is really the biggest thing, this piece on the processes of unconscious bias, tying it to our annual equity audit that we really just instigated last year and will do now annually. That is our mission for change.
Really good points. Appreciate all the work that you're doing, leading the way in that space. I think a lot of us can take away some key concepts. I had two really key questions I want to make sure I get to the panel. And Lisa, this first one's for you. They wanted to know if you could discuss the process of shutting down a project for experiencing hate issues. How is that decision made? Who has the authority to shut that project down? And again, this is definitely something that we haven't seen before. And I think more companies could learn from what Turner's doing in this space.
So if you know, when you look at something, when there's a safety incident on a project, every safety unit immediately gets called into a hotline. Everyone gets notified in a text message, you know, our leadership in our company. Anything that comes up that is a bias event, a bias motivated event, a BME, we call it bias motivated, same process. Instantly gets called in, immediately gets notified out to the leadership within that region and organization. We're on a call within 2 hours. So it's not taken lightly. You know, I think one of the questions was like, that's a big deal. I'm like, well, it's not taken lightly because we want to make sure too, is it a false alarm? Was it a bias motivated event? But I will tell you, even when it's an implied bias motivated event, we still will shut the job down. Typically, the people that are involved in that are our executive vice president who's in charge of our region, sometimes our CEO. We have a team through our diversity and inclusion action committee that's kind of scattered throughout the country. So it's a team decision that we do it. But I'll be honest, our CEO, especially when we really, I hate to say started doing this, it was last year that, you know, we haven't done hundreds of them, thankfully, because there hasn't been hundreds. But once you do it once, it's amazing what will not happen on that job again. Because the trade workers really understand nobody wants to be that person that might have been the cause of shutting the whole job down. But we shut down, as an example, a major project in the middle of the country. And our CEO said, listen, I'll take responsibility. With that, called that client, said, I will take responsibility. I'm shutting this job down and I will make up the time and it's not going to cost you a penny. And that was how serious Turner is about this is not going to happen in our house. So it is a senior level decision, but people are empowered everyone calls in, no matter how small, no matter if it's pencil on a wall of drywall. But I think that is what it takes. You can't leave it to the discretion of just one person on that job, because they will feel, how can I shut the job down? How can I do that? You have to bring it up a little bit, not to take it away from them. They should be empowered, but it's very hard to do. You know, if you're a superintendent on a job, it's hard to shut your own job down. We want to help be supportive to say, no, we're doing this together. We're doing this together. This is the right thing to do. We're shutting the job down.
Wow, that's definitely all about being bought in, and it leads to the last question. I see there might be another one here, but from Austin, she had a question for all the panelists here about buy-in. Her specific question is we often hear that DEI initiatives should have buy-in at the top, but what if it doesn't? What advice do you have for DEI leaders within those companies that maybe aren't in those executive roles? What are the best steps of action in creating opportunity? I open it for Lydia and Brandon to jump in as well with your thoughts.
I would say show them bottom line profitability. If we got to think about how we can create and take that business to its next level heights, and that's usually driven through the customer experience. And by providing the diversity, the equity, and the inclusion from the top down, you will add that bottom line profitability. And usually, if a CEO is a smart person, they're usually going to be taken and understanding what that should look like if those numbers are truly moving, and showing them the research that's out there and what they could do, the possibility from different markets, new markets, and how they can go in and show impact within those different opportunities. I think that might be an opportunity. And the other thing too is just thinking about like doing what's right? Like just talking about doing what's right, and creating ownership and opportunity within themselves internally, and from a community standpoint externally.
Great points. Brandon, Lisa?
Yeah, just add real quickly, to Austin's question, which was a very good one. Considering the injustices and upheaval that we've been realizing in our society, to be frank, and if you are in an organization that has taken no action, no stance, it's probably not a cultural fit for you. And I think it is important to start, as Lydia said, to start recognizing by building your case about the positive implications about being in an organization that has a strategic imperative around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I would add belonging to that strategy as well. So, my thing is that the marketplace for the most part is very plentiful. Sometimes it's best to transfer your talents otherwise, so that you're not miserable and that you do feel a part of the organizational culture, so that you can have an impact while being present with your full self in the office.
Great points, Brandon. Lisa, I'll give you the last word.
I was like, they said it all. Nothing, like they did a great job. I was like, I don't even need the last word. No, I appreciate what Lydia and Brandon are bringing. I think they covered it well.
I really appreciate this amazing panel, and Randy, your facilitation, always awesome. It's 4:59. I guess what I'd say in closing is again, thanks to everyone for participating in the conversation. And I love what Lydia said about the bottom line. We had the pleasure in Sacramento of having some representation in one of the advisory panels for a county in Indiana. And what was interesting is that the county was trying to improve its economic development prospects, given its proximity to airports and highways and open development opportunities. And the number one barrier they had in terms of being able to recruit businesses was the lack of diversity that the city offered, and the lack of belonging and welcoming that was there. And the reality is that LGBTQA populations of color did not feel comfortable. And we had to explain that was really about improving the entire community. It wasn't just trying to be diverse for diversity's sake. It's for the betterment of everyone involved. and the bottom line that Lydia talked about. So I'm hoping that folks were able to take that away from this conversation amongst the many wonderful nuggets from this great panel. So thanks again. We'll be looking to get, I guess, class 201. If Randy would like to be the professor for one more session, we'd love to have you all back. Have a great day and hope to see you on May the 19th for our housing committee event. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, panel.
Everybody, thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.